And so you stand here now, not at the edge of chance, but within the holy chamber of causation itself. Something in you has already begun to stir, hasn't it? The soft rustling of remembrance, not of a technique, not of some worldly strategy, but of the ancient knowing that all things spring from within. You didn't stumble upon this message. It was summoned by you from a place deeper than desire. For what the world calls luck, or fortune, or randomness, you are beginning to see as reflection. And as that truth settles in, as it whispers against the walls of your inner temple, a greater mystery begins to unfold. The world may say that winning the lottery is improbable, that money appears at the mercy of fate, economics, or hard labor. But what if everything they told you was backwards? What if the outer world, with all its figures and forecasts, is nothing more than your consciousness made visible? Most never realize this, because they never look beyond the veil. But you are beginning to see, to remember, that wealth is not something to attain, it is something to awaken. You are not here to get lucky. You are here to assume the identity of abundance, to dwell in the end as if it were already so, and in doing so, you rewrite the script before the scene ever plays. You must feel this not as a concept, but as breath, as presence. Your imagination is not idle, it is divine. It is the creative power spoken of in Genesis, when it was said, "Let there be light." That command was not issued once, it echoes now through you. Every time you imagine, you speak the word. Every time you see the life you desire in your mind, and accept it as true, you are lighting a match in the darkness of the seeming world, and the outer must follow. To win the lottery, yes, even that, you do not chase numbers, you do not chase tickets, you do not chase luck. You assume the feeling of one who already holds the winning ticket. You dwell not on the outcome, but on the identity. Who are you now, in that state fulfilled? What do you see around you? How do you walk, breathe, speak? You do not beg, you do not wish, you feel it real, you feel it done. There is no begging in the kingdom of God. There is only assuming. An assumption, when persisted in, becomes fact. So the question is never, how will it come, but rather, can I accept that it is already mine within? For as you believe in your heart, not with effort, but with stillness, it is done unto you. Now notice what shifts in you as you hear this, that flutter behind the ribs, the warmth in the spine, the softening behind the eyes. That is not imagination, that is creation, that is the field turning, the mirror beginning to reshape. You are not hoping, you are not trying, you are remembering. And the more you dwell here in the end fulfilled, the more the world must bend and yield to that inner decree. Do not look outside for confirmation. The outer world is slow to catch up, but it must, because it is law, and law is not persuaded by doubt, nor delayed by logic. It is moved only by your inner knowing, and that knowing becomes the mold through which reality is poured. Imagine now the version of you who has already received the wealth you seek, the numbers aligned, the account full, the freedom real. Breathe into that version, not just what they have, but who they are. You are not building an outcome, you are inhabiting a new self, and when the self is shifted, the world cannot help but echo it. Feel the velvet of that shift. Let it wrap around you like a garment. The feeling is the secret, and you are beginning to wear it well. The bank statement may not yet show it, the mailbox may not yet speak of it, but you do, and your word is the first cause. But there's a reason few ever experience this directly, not because it doesn't work, but because they do not persist. They step into the new self, but then peek at the old mirror, searching for evidence, and in that moment, they return to the old man. But you are learning now to remain, to dwell in the state, regardless of what appears, to be still, and know, which brings us to the deeper mystery, hidden in plain sight. And as you learn to remain, to abide in the unseen, as though it were already done, you discover something the world has forgotten, that dwelling is not effort, it is surrender, not to chance, not to odds or calculations, but to the deeper truth that all things come from within. It is here in this stillness of assumption that the harvest begins, not by labor, but by likeness. For every seed bears fruit after its kind, and your assumption is the seed of your reality. Most search for signs, forgetting they are the source. But you are becoming still enough to see. You are not reacting to the world, you are creating it, from within the temple of your own consciousness. You are not waiting on money, money is waiting on your alignment. It moves toward you when you stop chasing it. It listens when you speak from the end, not of lack, but of fullness. The language of assumption is silent, sure, and done. There is a great rest in this truth, a letting go of trying to figure out the way. The mind will ask, but what are the chances? The soul responds, I am the cause. That single knowing dismantles all limitation. It is not arrogance, it is remembrance, that your awareness of being is God, not separate, not outside, but here, clothed in your flesh, breathing through your imagination. And God does not hope, God declares. So what is your declaration tonight? Not with your mouth, but with your inner state. For the words you speak within yourself echo louder than any outer cry. Do not say you are poor, and pray to be rich. Say you are rich, and feel the peace of one who knows it is so. That peace, that deep stillness of fulfillment, is your prayer answered. You are not attracting money, you are revealing the money that was always yours, veiled only by your own disbelief. The old self is quick to return, to peak, to doubt, to measure, but the new you, the awakened you, stays in the state, even when the outer world contradicts it, especially then. For what you assume in the dark will be shouted from the rooftops. This is the law. When thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. The closet is not a room, it is your imagination, and the reward is the outer reflection of your inner knowing. Now feel it, not the thing, but the being, not the lottery win, but the one who has already received. Taste the ease in their breath, the quiet confidence in their pace, hear the silence in their mind, where once there was doubt. Let that version of you rise up. You don't have to create it, it already exists, in the timeless now. You merely choose it, wear it and persist. And should fear arise, as it often does when you cross the threshold, do not resist it. Do not fight the shadows, turn instead to light. For the shadow only appears where the light is near. Fear is the signal that your old identity is crumbling. Let it fall, let it die. It cannot walk where you are going. You are not becoming something new, you are shedding what was never true. Money is not a prize, it is a mirror. It reflects who you believe you are. And if you will persist in assuming the state of the one who is already wealthy, not as fantasy, but as fact, the mirror must conform, not instantly, but inevitably. Do not mistake the delay for denial, it is gestation, and the fruit ripens not by force, but by faith. You are entering a new kind of power, one that moves without noise, one that does not chase, does not plead, but knows. A power that speaks once, silently, inwardly, and then walks as if the world has already obeyed, and soon it does. But what if the world never changes? What if the numbers never come? These questions will whisper, clawing for attention, and yet something in you now sees through them. For the moment you truly live in the end, the result no longer matters. You have already become it. And when being is aligned, the having must follow, and this prepares you for a deeper unveiling, not of how to receive, but of how to become the source itself. And, as you begin to sense yourself as the source, something quiet and holy unfolds in the depths of your awareness. The chase begins to dissolve, the hunger softens, for you no longer grasp at money, as if it were outside you. You begin to feel the wealth within, not as a metaphor, but as living substance. The golden light of sufficiency flickers behind your ribs, and you realize money was never the goal, identity was. To become the source is not to perform some sacred feat, but to stop forgetting who you already are. When you truly assume the state of the one who has received, you no longer seek evidence, you radiate it. The air around you changes, people speak to you differently. Doors open with a whisper, not because of force, but because of resonance. Life mirrors you perfectly, because it is you, extended. There is no separation between inner and outer, only the illusion of delay, and even that dissolves in the light of sustained assumption. Feel what happens when you stop asking when, and begin knowing, now. Something settles, the tight grip loosens, the river flows again. You stop calculating and start resting. This is not passive, this is powerful. For when you rest in the assumption of wealth, you are aligning with the most active force in the universe. The word made flesh, the image made real, and still the world will tempt you back into doubt. It will parade numbers, deadlines, opinions. It will urge you to check, to compare, to measure progress. But you have remembered the deeper law, that imagination creates reality, and reality conforms to imagination, not the other way around. So you remain, not in force, but in fidelity, not in struggle, but in sacred agreement with your inner vision. Ask yourself gently, without striving, what would it feel like if the lottery were already won? Not how would it look, but how would it feel to dwell in that knowing? No tension, no trying, just presence. That feeling, that effortless relief, that calm certainty, is your compass. It is not the feeling that follows the win, it is the feeling that causes it. You are not waiting to feel that way, you are using it as your key. You may wonder, but is it possible to win something so rare, so unlikely, by simply assuming it? And yet the only rarity is your belief that it must be hard, that it must be earned, that it must take time. In truth, there is no degree of difficulty in creation. Whether you manifest a coin or a kingdom, the power that brings it forth does not strain. Creation does not rank your desires, only your faith does. You do not manipulate the outer world, you awaken the inner one, and from that inner awakening, forms take shape, details arise, means appear, not because you willed them, but because you remembered them. You remembered yourself as the dreamer, and the dream responds. All things whatsoever ye pray, and ask for, believe that you have received them, and ye shall receive them. The believing comes first, the having follows. This is not philosophy, this is law. It does not bend, it does not sleep, it reflects. So what do you believe now, in your secret heart? Not what you affirm, not what you hope, but what you quietly assume as real. That is your true prayer, that is your ongoing creation. You may say the words, I am wealthy, but if you feel lack, you have not yet shifted states. But there is no shame in this, only invitation. You need not fix the old state, you simply move into the new. Let the old fall like leaves in autumn. Let the self that hoped, tried and waited return to the soil, and let the self who is, the self who dwells in the finished desire, rise. This self is not moved by circumstance. This self does not flinch. It knows, it sees beyond appearances, and calls things which are not seen as though they were, and soon the scene must match. But what if it seems nothing is happening? What if the days pass, and the world remains the same? That very question holds the answer, because the one who says nothing is happening, is still watching the mirror, rather than abiding in the self who cast the image. You do not water the seed, and dig it up to check. You trust the unseen movement beneath the surface. You trust the silence, the stillness, the hidden gestation of what already is. The old mind looks for signs, but the awakened soul knows. The sign is the assumption itself, the feeling is the fulfillment. You are not waiting on proof, you are allowing the inevitable. For when you dwell in the end, fully and without wavering, the delay becomes irrelevant. It may be a day, a week, a season, but you no longer count time, because you have stepped outside of it. You no longer beg the world to show you something new, you simply become someone new, and let the world respond in kind. This is the mystery of creation, that the outer world does not change first, the self does. The moment you become it within, the world must catch up, even if the appearance lingers, even if the noise continues, even if doubt knocks. You answer none of it, you remain, not because you're trying to prove something, but because you've already seen it in the unseen, you've already felt it as done, and in that knowing, the outer dissolves and reforms. This is not delusion, this is dominion. To win the lottery, or to attract any sum of money, is not about learning some secret formula, it is about dissolving the belief that it is separate from you. All wealth is self-revealed. You are not trying to become rich, you are removing what says you are not. The moment you drop the veil, the light pours through. You are not becoming something new, you are remembering what has always been true, that your imagination, clothed in feeling, is the womb of reality, that the thoughts you dwell upon, and the moods you refuse to abandon, shape the world in precise reflection. There is no other power, no other cause. You do not need luck, you do not need favorable odds, you only need to align, without interruption, to the state of already having. And if the outer seems slow, smile. The outer is not the source, it is the echo, and echoes always arrive, though never first. This is the holy stillness that begins to blossom in you now, the sacred calm that comes not from having received, but from having assumed, that deep unshakable peace that says, it is done. You no longer wrestle with what is, you no longer argue with appearances, you walk in the unseen, and the seen must follow. Do you feel it now, that shift in your breath? That soft current of quiet certainty, that is the fertile soil of creation. You are not asking anymore, you are being, and being is the only true prayer. Not the words, not the effort, the identity. Let this feeling of already done stretch through your limbs like warm light. Let it move through your spine like honey. Let it soften your gaze, and slow your thoughts, and still the old reactions. You do not respond to life anymore. You initiate it, in the quiet of your own inner sanctuary, and from this stillness, all things come, not because you chase them, but because they remember their home in you. You become magnetic not by desire, but by dwelling, and what belongs to the state you occupy must find you. You need not go to it. It comes to you, in forms the old self could not predict, through channels the intellect could never manufacture. You will call it chance, but it will be law. So walk as the one who already possesses. Let every step echo the rhythm of the fulfilled. Speak not to convince, but as one who has no need to explain. Look not to see if the world believes you. It does not need to. Only you must believe, and remain. And if the world asks, what are you doing to make it happen? Let your stillness answer. Let your peace be the only reply. For the silence of one who knows is more powerful than 1,000 noisy efforts. Yet even in this stillness, a deeper revelation stirs beneath the surface, something older than belief, and more powerful than technique. And that revelation is this: you are not merely imagining wealth, you are imagining yourself into alignment with the infinite. It is not the number on a check, or the weight of gold that matters. It is the quality of being that you embody when you no longer see money as separate, when you no longer treat it as something to possess, but something that flows from your own nature. You are not just attracting abundance, you are awakening as abundance itself. This is the mystery the world cannot see. It believes in effort, in competition, in the law of averages. But you have stepped beneath that illusion. You are beginning to see with spiritual eyes, and the vision is simple, but terrifying to the old mind, that all you have ever experienced was what you dared to assume, and all you will experience is what you now claim as true in the inner silence. You do not wait to see the result. You become the one for whom it has already occurred. You think from the end, not of it. You sit in the inner sanctuary, where no one can disturb your knowing. You walk through the world as one who has already received. This is not pretending, this is creation. So many attempt to imagine wealth, but remain shackled to the idea of themselves as lacking. They build visions, but do not move in consciousness. They affirm riches but continue to feel unworthy, and so their words fall to the ground, and they say the law has failed. But the law has never failed. They simply return to the old self too soon. The seed was good, but they abandoned the soil. Feel now how sacred it is to persist, not with strain, but with sacred indifference to what the outer says. The world will give you every reason to doubt, and yet you stay, you remain. You are the one who knows, the one who no longer checks for signs, for you are the sign. The evidence lives in your body, your breath, your being. You feel it real, and the world bows. There is no magic in the numbers, no power in the lottery ticket itself. The power is in your assumption, your inner speech, your emotional tone, the mood you carry in stillness. All things respond to that signal, and money in all its forms is simply one of many mirrors reflecting your self-concept. Let go now of the need to strategize. Let go of the timing, the method, the path. These are not your concern. They are the business of law, and law cannot fail. Your task is singular, sacred and still, to remain faithful to the state you have chosen, and to wear it, without apology, without hesitation, without explanation. Do not worry if you feel the old state rise now and then. Let it pass like wind through open windows. You are not bound to what visits you. You are bound only to what you dwell upon. And even in those moments where fear whispers, you do not fight it. You turn inward again, to the light, to the word, to the imaginal act already complete. Feel the atmosphere of the fulfilled state. Let it cradle your senses. Let it color the way you see the world. You begin to realize that the version of you who has already received is not a fantasy. It is your truest identity, calling you home. You are not creating this self. You are remembering it. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is not a promise to one man in scripture. This is a law spoken to your own soul. The moment you assume, the response is set in motion. You do not need to push. You need only to know. Let that knowing rest deep in your belly, soft and sure. Let your mind grow quiet in its warmth. You do not need to figure it out. You are the answer you've been seeking. You are the wealth you've been chasing. All else is shadow. And just as you begin to feel the ease of this truth,
something stranger and even more luminous begins to emerge. Not just the ability to receive wealth, but the power to create it from nothing at all.
And this power to create from nothing, it is not new, and it is not rare. It is what you have always been doing, though perhaps unaware. Every dollar that ever touched your hand, every twist of fate, every so-called coincidence that brought increase or loss, each arose not from the world, but from the womb of your own consciousness. You have never been at the mercy of economy, luck, or effort. You have only ever been ruled by one thing, your own assumption of self. To know this is to feel a sacred trembling, a quiet awe, not of fear, but of realization. You are not waiting for a shift. You are the shift. The world bends not to action, but to awareness. You do not need proof of abundance to believe you are abundant. You believe, and then proof appears. Never the reverse. It has always begun with you, with your imaginal act, your inner word, your silent decree. You may wonder how something can be created from nothing, but that's only because the old mind still clings to matter, to sequence, to external causes. Yet all that is seen was made by what is not seen. Even now, the money you desire exists, not in your wallet perhaps, but in consciousness. The wealth is already yours in the invisible, and if you dare to claim it inwardly, to accept it as already real, then the world must rearrange itself to mirror that choice, not by force, not by chance, but by law. And this is the great reversal that few ever trust long enough to see. The less you try to make it happen, the faster it flows. The more you surrender the struggle, the more freely it comes. Why? Because when you stop trying, you start being. And being is creative. You do not need to hold the winning ticket in your hand to feel the joy. You do not need to see the bank account change to walk as one who is rich. You only need to wear the feeling like a cloak, to saturate your breath and posture and tone with the essence of already having. This is how you create from nothing. You recognize that what you call nothing is in fact the infinite field, and your assumption is the mold that shapes it. Do not worry how it will come. The how is the most deceptive question. It pulls you from the end and back into means, but the power is always in the end. Rest in the scene fulfilled. Rest in the version of you who already has the freedom, the options, the overflow. Let your sleep be filled with images of completion, not desire. Let your waking hours be quiet with knowing, not busy with seeking. You have no need to impress the universe. You are the universe, clothed in flesh, and your imaginal acts are sacred, not fantasy, but form in its first state. When you imagine money flowing freely, easily, continually, and when you dwell in that state without contradiction, then reality must obey. It has no choice. It is consciousness externalized. And God calleth those things which be not as though they were. So must you. Not out of delusion, but out of divine memory. You remember what the world forgets, that the outer is only echo, that the cause is always within. Let that remembrance rest in your bones. Let it soften your muscles, loosen your grip. You don't need to grasp anymore. You only need to see, to accept, to yield inwardly to the truth already alive within you, that you are not hoping for abundance. You are embodying it. And through that embodiment, through that silent acceptance, even the impossible must bend. You are not here to follow the rules of the world. You are here to rewrite them by becoming a living law. You don't need to win anything. You only need to assume you already have, and walk accordingly. The numbers, the method, the event, these are shadows. The source is your state, and the state is yours to choose. So choose now. Choose boldly. Choose not with strain, but with stillness. Wear the state of the wealthy one. Sleep in it, wake in it, speak from it, and let the world unfold in response. And just when you feel you've begun to master this inner creation, a quieter revelation stirs, that even money is just the beginning, because as the truth deepens, it reveals this subtle and sacred truth, that money was never the destination. It was a symbol, a servant, a reflection of something much greater. The world may worship it, the old self may crave it, but to the awakened soul, money becomes only a tool, a mirror of inner clarity, an echo of self-recognition. You did not come here to possess currency. You came to remember yourself as the source of all things, and so the more fully you dwell in the state of already having, the more you find something unexpected flowering in the silence, a sense of completeness, with or without the visible form. The state becomes enough, the being becomes its own reward, and it is from this spiritual fullness that the floodgates open, for the world can only give to the one who no longer needs. Need creates resistance, want whispers of lack, but assumption, true, steady, radiant, assumes not because it longs, but because it knows, and knowing is still, knowing is quiet, knowing does not demand, it simply breathes, and becomes. Feel now the difference in your body between asking and assuming. The tension leaves the shoulders, the breath slows, the eyes soften. You are no longer sending out requests, you are becoming the embodiment of answered prayer. You are no longer looking for proof, you are the proof, and the world merely reflects your declaration. This is the heart of the law. You do not receive what you want, you receive what you are, and what you are is not defined by past behavior, nor limited by what others perceive. You are not your history, you are not your circumstances, you are consciousness, ever becoming what you dare to assume. You may remember moments when things seemed to appear by miracle, a gift, a solution, a meeting, a win, and perhaps at the time you called it luck. But look again, see more deeply, trace the moment back to its root, and you will find a shift that happened within, a moment of letting go, a spark of belief, a fragment of inner agreement that said, "It is mine," before anything visible confirmed it. That was not chance, that was you, operating the law. You have done it before, you are doing it now, but now you do it with awareness, with intention, with love. Begin to walk through your days, as if nothing is missing. Act not to get, but from having. Speak not to convince, but from fullness. Let your body memorize the mood of wealth, the rhythm of sufficiency. Let your inner world become so saturated, with the end fulfilled, that the outer cannot help but conform. You are no longer planting seeds and running away. You are staying, watering, trusting the darkness beneath the soil, knowing the bloom is already written. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void. This word is not only spoken aloud, it is the felt word within you, the assumption you carry as if it were breath. And if you do not contradict it, if you rest in it with peace and certainty, then even the wildest desire must materialize. And yet the longer you abide in this divine certainty, the more you begin to feel a new desire stirring, not just for wealth, but for alignment, not just to win, but to awaken. You begin to seek not the prize, but the light behind the prize, not the thing, but the knowing that you are the source from which all things flow. This is the turning point, the golden hour, where the soul outgrows the shell of wanting, and expands into the being of fullness itself, where money is no longer a destination, but a natural byproduct of your state, where abundance becomes effortless, not because of what you have done, but because of who you now know yourself to be. And as this new identity settles in, as it gently dissolves the need for signs and the habit of checking, a subtle shift begins to ripple outward. Something begins to move in the unseen, something has already been commanded into being, and though you do not yet see it with your eyes, the world has already shifted. The pattern has been rewritten, the wave has been cast from the shore of your consciousness, and even now, reality is bending to carry it back to you, slowly at first, quietly, like the tide rolling in under moonlight, unseen yet certain. What you have assumed in stillness has gone out into the field, and it will not return void. You do not need to track it, you do not need to watch the horizon. Your only task is to remain, to abide in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not occasionally, not conditionally, but with the kind of quiet loyalty that lovers give in the dark. No proof needed, only presence. You do not manifest by bursts of will, but by sustained knowing. Let this knowing deepen, now into the marrow of your being. You are not becoming rich. You are rich, not by the measure of numbers, but by the truth of identity. You are not summoning fortune from elsewhere. You are dissolving the lie that it was ever apart from you. The distance between you and what you desire was never real. It was only the space between two states, the one you once held, and the one you now inhabit. You are not here to wait. You are here to be. And being is not passive. Being is creative. It is the root from which all else grows. When you feel from the end, when you allow yourself to walk, to breathe, to rest in the atmosphere of already having,
you are impressing the fabric of reality itself. This is the art of inner causation, and it is not bound by time, nor limited by scale. It makes no difference whether you assume $1 or $1,000,000, a job or a fortune. The substance behind it is the same, consciousness, and consciousness, clothed in feeling, becomes flesh. You do not need to visualize perfectly. You need only to feel truly. A vague but honest sense of fulfillment will do more than 1,000 forced images. It is the mood that matters, the state, the saturation of your being in the feeling of the end. Dwell in it, and the forms will come. And if they delay, if they seem to take their time, do not let the surface fool you. Every delay is an invitation to deepen the state, not to abandon it. Every moment without the thing is a test, not of the law, but of your dwelling. Will you remain in the house you've built, or will you wander again into lack? You remain, gently, firmly, without needing proof. For the longer you abide in the state, the more real it becomes to you. And when it becomes more real within than what is seen without, the outer must yield, the mirror must turn. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is not waiting for signs, it is choosing now, and walking as if the unseen were already visible. That is substance, that is evidence. So imagine now, without effort, without strain, that you already hold the ticket, that the numbers aligned, that the announcement has been made. What does your body feel like? What does your breath do? What thoughts no longer trouble you? Let that feeling wash over you, not as a wish, but as a memory. You are not creating something new, you are touching what already exists in a higher dimension of self. You are collapsing the veil between timelines, and selecting the one where it is already done, and you remain there, not to get something from the state, but because it is who you now are. The money becomes inevitable, because you are no longer the version of you that lacks it. You have stepped into the scene where it has already arrived. Do not be fooled by the silence. The greatest shifts happen beneath the surface. Trust the stillness, trust the unseen hand, trust the law that never sleeps. And even as you rest in this truth, another revelation begins to whisper through the silence, that abundance responds not just to what you assume, but to what you accept as natural. And what you accept as natural, you call into being without effort, without strain, without even noticing the moment it arrives. For that which is natural to you does not feel like a miracle, it feels like home. This is the true secret behind every lasting manifestation, not force, not repetition, but normalcy. The assumption must become so deeply part of you that it ceases to feel extraordinary. It becomes ordinary. It becomes inevitable. This is where most turn back. They imagine great riches, sudden winnings, a flood of provision, but deep within, the mind whispers, it's too much, it's too rare. That doesn't happen to people like me. And that whisper, subtle and soft, is the silent assassin of creation, because no matter how beautiful the image, if you do not accept it as natural to you, the bridge cannot form. So now, ask gently, not with judgment, but with clarity, what feels natural to you? What level of wealth do you accept without effort? What kind of ease do you allow into your life without resistance? You will find that you are always manifesting what you believe is normal, and yet even now, that norm is shifting. For the more you dwell in the end, the more you walk as the one who has, the more the unfamiliar becomes familiar. You are not trying to believe, you are getting used to the feeling of already having. This is the holy rehearsal of the new self, and each time you return to that state, you dissolve the distance between inner reality and outer reflection. You are not trying to convince yourself, you are inviting the body, the breath, the mood, to acclimate it. And what begins as fantasy becomes memory. What began as effort becomes nature. This is the still miracle of the law, that the bridge of incidents, invisible at first, begins to rise around you like mist, a conversation, a sudden inspiration, a small wind that opens into more, and none of it feels strange. It feels like the most obvious thing in the world, because your world is only ever the echo of what you have accepted as normal. Do not try to force this shift. You cannot push the seed to sprout, but you can rest in the knowing that your assumption made natural must take root, and from that root, fruit must come. According to your faith be it unto you. And faith in this holy sense is not blind effort, it is relaxed acceptance, it is the inner agreement that this life, this outcome, this wealth, belongs to you now, not by merit, not by proof, but by birthright. Let your inner world begin to cradle this truth. Let the atmosphere of ease rise around you like incense. You are not waiting on the lottery to feel the freedom. You are allowing the freedom now, and that vibration becomes the signal to which your world responds. You will know the shift, not by what appears, but by what no longer troubles you. The desire no longer stings. The vision no longer feels far. You begin to smile at what once stirred anxiety, and that smile is the evidence that the state has taken root. You are no longer seeking money. You are becoming the one to whom money flows, not once but continually. You are not reaching for wealth. You are embodying the rhythm of it, and that rhythm draws to you the forms, the opportunities, the alignments you do not need to plan for. They appear as if by grace, but grace is just law in motion through love. Now rest in that love, not as a concept, but as a living current. You are cared for, supported, supplied. You are not trying to win. You are remembering that you have won, and the outer is catching up with the inner scene already established. And as you let that feeling deepen, as the inner climate grows richer, more stable, more effortless, another question quietly arises. Not how do I receive more, but what if there is no limit to what I can assume as natural? And if there truly is no limit, then what boundaries have you unknowingly drawn around your own wealth? Not through lack of effort, but through lack of permission. For the mind does not manifest what it believes is too big, too bold, too far beyond what others have deemed acceptable. But your imagination, unbound by such rules, was never designed to think in rations. It was made to mirror the infinite. You begin to feel the edges dissolve now, not with resistance, but with awe. What if wealth in your life could move beyond stability, beyond sufficiency, into a realm so effortless and continuous, that you no longer thought of money at all, not because it was absent, but because it had become like air, always present, always available, never questioned? This is not greed, this is spiritual alignment, for to assume limitless abundance is to honor the God within, the I am that knows no boundaries, and that which you assume without resistance becomes your experience. When your naturalness expands, your world expands. Let yourself feel the vastness of what is possible, not in a distant someday, but in this very breath. Let the walls around your old beliefs crumble like mist. What seemed too much yesterday now begins to feel reasonable. What was once unreasonable begins to feel natural, and what was once natural now opens the gate for the miraculous. This is how the impossible becomes ordinary, not by striving, but by sustained identity. You do not need to rehearse worthiness. You only need to accept that the divine operates through you, and that your desire, pure and persistent, is the voice of God remembering itself. You do not need to justify this abundance. You are not taking from anyone. There is no lack in the infinite. There is only reflection. What you claim, you make room for, and what you embody, you receive. So let the claim be quiet. Let it be soft. Let it come not from desperation, but from calm remembrance. You are not becoming someone new. You are shedding who you are not. The self who feared, the self who waited, the self who doubted. That was never you. That was the garment you wore when you forgot. And now you remember. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Not someday, not when you've proven yourself. Now all that I have is already yours, if only you will wear it within. The lottery, the wealth, the overflow, these are shadows of a deeper truth, that you are not here to get anything. You are here to give shape to the unseen, through assumption, through feeling, through silence. You are the sculptor, not the clay, the source, not the seeker. Begin to feel how effortless it becomes, when you let go of urgency, when you no longer need the world to affirm your vision, when you no longer search for evidence, because your being has become the evidence. It is a sacred lightness, a holy detachment, not from the desire, but from the tension around it. You carry the vision not like a burden, but like breath, always there, always moving, always enough. And even now, something in you knows, the outer has already begun to shift, quietly, invisibly. The fabric is reweaving, not through your effort, but through your alignment. The moment you assumed it real, the structure began. Let it be enough. Let it be done. Let your imagination carry it all the way through, without asking, without checking, without adjusting. Stay faithful to the version of you who already received, and let the world yield in time. But just as you settle into this rhythm of quiet power, another question stirs from the deep. If I can assume wealth, and the world responds, what else have I unconsciously accepted as true, and how might I begin to revise it?
And if you could assume yourself into abundance, could you not also unassume every thread of lack that still lingers in the corners of your being? What have you accepted without question, not by choice, but by repetition? The stories inherited, the beliefs absorbed from voices long gone, the quiet agreements made in moments of fear, are they not all just assumptions clothed in memory? You begin to see now that your reality has never been built on truth, but on agreement. And the moment you withdraw that agreement, the structure begins to fall. You do not need to fight the old story. You do not need to argue with it, heal it, or relive it. You need only to revise it, to go back in imagination and see it differently, feel it differently. Assume it never held power over you. Revision is the mercy of God within you, the power to rewrite not the event, but the meaning, to change the past by reordering your assumption in the present. For nothing lives outside of your consciousness, and what you revise within, though the world may call it memory, becomes the new cause. Let the image arise now, gently, a moment where you once felt small, a scene where you accepted less than what your soul whispered you were worth. And now, without judgment, without force, step into it anew. See yourself as whole there, loved there, chosen, prosperous, lifted. Let the atmosphere change, not through effort, but through assumption. Feel it real, and let it be done. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, not by effort, not by labor, by a new seeing, a new inner agreement. This is the essence of creation, not adding, but changing the root. For every branch is shaped by what lies beneath, and you now are touching the root of self. So many carry forward the weight of stories they never wrote, but you are the author, and what you revise in imagination, you revise in life. The world is not fixed, it is elastic. It conforms to the consciousness that beholds it. You may not notice it immediately. The mind will say, it's just pretending. But the law does not care whether your revision feels true. It cares only that you persist, that you wear it, that you replace the old garment with a new one, and refuse to take it off. You are not defined by what happened. You are defined by what happened. You are defined by what you assume about what happened. And assumption, when sustained, becomes fact. So now you walk lighter, not because the past has changed, but because you have changed your relationship to it. You have rewritten the emotional script, and that new script is already radiating through your state, calling forth a new world. Notice how this power humbles you, not into shame, but into grace. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are a shaper of it. And if the old self returns to tell the story of failure, lack, disappointment, you no longer listen. You revise again. You revise until only love remains. This is not denial, it is dominion. It is choosing the version of reality that aligns with your divine nature, rather than the one that was handed to you in fear. Let revision become your quiet art, your secret prayer. Each time you remember lack, go back, see plenty. Each time you feel forgotten, go back, feel chosen. Each time the memory stings, go back, replace it with peace. You are not escaping the past, you are setting it free. And as you revise, you rise. The old man dies, and the new man emerges, not in time, but in consciousness. And from this resurrection, wealth flows more freely, not because you earned it, but because the one who was unworthy no longer exists. And yet as this new clarity settles in, as you realize you are both sculptor and clay, a gentler wonder arises in the stillness. What if the very desire for wealth was never about the money at all, but about remembering the power that breathed you into being? And if the desire itself was never about gain, but remembrance, then what you once called wanting was always sacred. You were never reaching outward for a prize. You were reaching inward for your origin, for the source that imagined you into existence, and whispered, all that I have is already yours. The lottery ticket, the money, the wealth, these were never the destination. They were symbols, gateways, holy mirrors leading you back to the truth you buried under doubt, that you are already whole. Desire is not something to overcome. It is a divine invitation, a golden thread woven from the eternal into the dream of form. When rightly seen, every longing is a message from your higher self, gently beckoning you to awaken from the illusion of separation.
You think you want more, but what you really want is to remember that you lack nothing, and in that remembrance, all things are added. The one who assumes wealth effortlessly is not better, luckier, or more deserving. They are simply more aligned. They have shed the fiction that money is outside them. They have accepted themselves as cause, and money as effect. And they live in a quiet rhythm of sufficiency, not because of what they have, but because of who they know they are. Let this knowing become your resting place. You do not need more time, more proof, or more effort. You only need to abide in the feeling that what you once reached for is now yours, not someday, now. And if your senses do not yet show it, you do not resist them, you bless them, for they are slow servants of a fast reality. What is true inwardly must reflect outwardly, in time, and time bends to the one who refuses to doubt. You begin to walk differently now, not as one who hopes, but as one who remembers. You feel the hush of divine assurance move through your body, like light through glass. You are no longer moved by circumstance, you are moved by inner vision. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and its wealth flows without interruption when you cease trying to earn what was already given. You did not create your worth, you cannot add to it, or subtract from it. You can only agree with it, or forget it. And every assumption of lack was simply a moment of forgetting. But now you remember, you return, and in that returning, you redeem every lost moment. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Not sell it, not barter it, give it. This kingdom includes all things, yes, even money, not because it is most important, but because even that which seems least obeys the law. Let your desire purify now. Let it rise beyond numbers and purchases and promises of escape. Let it return to its source, to the yearning to be one with your Creator, to live in effortless unity with the divine imagination, to be the image and the likeness of abundance, not by outward display, but by inward knowing. And from this knowing, all things come. You do not chase the manifestations anymore. You dwell in the state of their fulfillment, and from that state, they unfold, one by one, softly, surely, and the outer becomes nothing more than the echo of your inner choice. But something new is blooming beneath the surface of this quiet power, not just how to create from within, but how to remain there unwavering, even when the winds of appearance howl, and the old world tugs at your attention. And when the winds come, and they will, it is not because the law has failed, but because the old world resists its own death. Every appearance that contradicts your assumption is not a punishment, but a question. Will you remain in the new state, even now? Will you hold to your inner conviction, even when all visible things seem to shout otherwise? This is the hidden threshold, not the moment of visualization, nor the moment of manifestation, but the sacred in-between, the void, the unseen passage where most turn back, not because the promise was false, but because they abandoned it too soon. They let the echo convince them the voice was never spoken, but you now have learned to rest in the voice. You have felt the reality of your assumption so deeply that no shadow can unseat it. The bank account may not yet speak of increase. The world may offer its old report, but your inner atmosphere has changed, and you no longer mistake the delay for denial. You know now that what you feel consistently becomes what you live eventually. You walk through this silence, not as one who lacks, but as one who waits in perfect assurance. And that assurance is not passive, it is creative. Each moment you persist in your chosen state, you deepen the groove, you set the tone, you prepare the field to receive the harvest already sown. Let your reactions become your compass, not to punish, but to guide. If you feel shaken, return inward. If doubt whispers, let it dissolve in remembrance. If lack tries to knock, let it pass through. You are no longer the one who opens that door. You do not plead for riches, you are the wealth, and your world, though slow to turn, must bend to reflect you. This is the art of unwavering assumption, not blind stubbornness, but sacred loyalty. You have chosen your identity. You have clothed yourself in the end. And now, you stay there, not because it is comfortable, but because it is true. Let the state hold you now, like a gentle current. Let it cradle your thoughts, guide your speech, inform your breath. You are no longer someone trying to manifest wealth. You are the embodiment of divine sufficiency. You do not need to look for signs. You have become one. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. And what is thee, if not the image of your desire fulfilled? What is thee, if not your inner agreement with God as your own I am? To keep the mind stayed is to refuse to leave the state, not with effort, but with presence, with breath, with the quiet rhythm of the one who knows it is done. You may notice the world testing you, not to harm, but to reveal the depth of your foundation, and when it does, rejoice. For every test is a final dissolving of the old man. Every contradiction is a last echo of what no longer lives. You do not need to argue with appearances. You bless them. You thank them for revealing where your faith still wavers. And then you return to the inner garden, to the silent knowing, to the feeling of already having. Remain here, especially here, for this is the moment that determines everything. You are no longer asking, where is it? You are asking, how much more deeply can I feel it as done? You are no longer chasing proof. You are walking in peace, and peace is the sound the world hears before it bows. Even now, you may sense the outer beginning to soften. Little things shift. The mood of the world around you changes. But this no longer excites or alarms you. It is natural. You expected it. You accepted it, long before it appeared. And in this deepening stillness, another layer of remembrance begins to open, that you are not just the creator of your fortune, you are the author of your entire world. Every figure, every event, every pattern, all rising to reflect the self you dare to assume. And if you are the author, then nothing in your world is random. Every character is cast by your own consciousness. Every conversation, a line drawn from the script you wrote in silence. Every delay, every acceleration, every moment of gain or pause, all of it, a faithful reflection of your self-concept. Not to blame, but to awaken, not to punish, but to show you the pen has always been in your hand. This is where creation transcends manifestation. You are no longer focused on the arrival of a single desire. You are sculpting the whole landscape. The you who wins the lottery does not only receive a prize, they live in a world where such miracles are normal, where ease and abundance move without resistance, where wealth is not earned, but remembered. You cannot enter that scene temporarily. You must dwell there, sleep there, speak from there, walk in that air, and you can, even now, even here, for imagination is not limited by time. You do not need to build a bridge through effort. You only need to saturate yourself in the end. Let the mood of that version of you rise in your body, until it becomes your new resting state. And from that resting, creation flows. Life reorganizes itself with quiet urgency to fulfill your decree, not because you demand it, but because you dared to become. You begin to realize how much of your former world was a mirror of self-neglect, assumptions made carelessly, accepted unconsciously, repeated until they hardened into structure. But now, you are no longer unconscious. You no longer accept the world as it appears. You recognize the image, you trace it to the root, and you change it at the level of being. You are not fixing the outer world, you are revising the inner identity that produced it. Let this fill you now, not with pressure, but with peace. For if all is you pushed out, then nothing is outside your reach. Not a person, not a fortune, not a circumstance. All of it lives within you first, and flows from the garment you wear in imagination. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not as he wishes, not as he works, as he thinks in his heart. This thinking is not logic. It is assumption. It is the unseen acceptance of identity that shapes what comes next. You think now, from the heart of wealth, from the still center of the one who no longer doubts, the one who has revised the world, not by resistance, but by presence, not by changing people, but by changing self. And so the people change, the world shifts, the outer bends, but even these shifts become less impressive to you now, because you are no longer looking outward to measure success. You are measuring inward, by peace, by ease, by how naturally you live in the end without needing to see it. This is the true sign of mastery, not what manifests, but how undisturbed you remain while it does. Let the silence deepen, let your breath slow. There is nothing to chase. The lottery is already won, not because a number has been called, but because the state has been assumed. And what you assume, you become, and what you become, the world must echo. This stillness is not emptiness, it is the fullness before form. And even now, in this sacred pause, another truth begins to flicker at the edge of awareness, that money is only the first veil, and behind it lies the greater inheritance of those who remember who they truly are. And if money is the veil, then what it conceals is not more treasure, but truth, not possession, but presence. The desire for wealth was always the doorway, never the destination. It awakened you, stirred you, lured you into a deeper remembrance. It promised freedom, but beneath that promise was a whisper, more ancient: you are already free. The gold you sought was never printed, it was woven into your being. The fortune was never in the numbers, but in the knowing. And as the veil begins to thin, you realize, money was just the language your soul used to bring you back to itself. You have not been trying to get rich, you have been trying to come home. The Norbis, the win, the outer prize, these things may still come, and come in beautiful, astonishing ways. But now, you receive them not with desperation, but with quiet clarity. They are not gods, they are not saviors, they are reflections, extensions, shadows cast by the inner flame of your assumption, and that flame is steady now. You no longer tremble when appearances lag, you no longer waver when the world echoes the old song, for the new song is playing within you, and its rhythm is unshakable. It does not shout, it hums, and it hums in perfect time, with the life you've already accepted as yours. Let the memory of this truth settle now deeper into the temple of your body. Let your thoughts slow, let your breath become still. You do not need to do anything, you only need to remain as the one who has. Let the doing arise naturally from the being. That is the rhythm of creation. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. When you dwell in the felt knowing of supply, the wanting ceases, not because your desires vanish, but because you have crossed the line from craving to claiming. You now see that wanting without assuming only multiplies distance, but assuming, feeling, dwelling, being, collapses it into now. This is how the miraculous becomes mundane, not by lowering its power, but by lifting your identity. You no longer hope for miracles, you live in them. The air around you feels different, because you are different. You no longer carry desire like a hunger, you wear it like a memory. It is done, it is known. You are not here to prove your worthiness to life, you are here to prove life through your worthiness, to embody the truth so deeply, that even money, even chance, even fortune must align with your stance. And this stance is gentle, not forceful, not loud. It does not try to make things happen, it knows they already have. You are not making the win appear, you are walking in the world where it has already occurred. And that world, seen only through the eyes of assumption, is beginning to take shape around you. You have stepped into the timeline, where ease is natural, where wealth is assumed, where the unseen is trusted above the visible. And the longer you remain here, the more the outer must bend to greet you. But as you dwell in this space, an even subtler invitation appears, not from the world, but from within, a gentle call to rise still higher, to ask with sacred boldness, if I can summon this reflection through identity, what would happen if I dared to live without limits, without condition, without fear?
And what would it mean to live without limits? To no longer ask what is possible, but to decide what is natural. To wake each morning not within the story you were given, but within the world you have chosen. A world shaped not by memory, but by assumption. A life governed not by habit, but by conscious embodiment. If there are no ceilings in God, then why would you allow one in yourself? The old mind trembles at such freedom. It looks for boundaries, edges, guidelines. It wants rules to follow, permissions to earn. But the awakened you needs none of that now. For you have seen that life does not respond to obedience, but to identity. Not to effort, but to essence. And the essence of you is limitless, eternal, divine. You are not meant to walk in probabilities. You are meant to walk in authority. To know, without proof, without permission, that the life you see within is more real than the one reflected without. And in that knowing, the world reorders itself. You begin to feel the old limits falling away, not with noise, but with stillness. Not in resistance, but in revelation. What once felt out of reach now feels obvious. What once required hope now rests in certainty. You no longer look to the past to measure what is possible. You look to the end, lived, fulfilled, embodied. And you let that image become your law. You breathe it in. You wear it gently. You make it familiar. This is the quiet mastery that births miracles. When the state is no longer something you visit, but the atmosphere in which you live. When having becomes your default mood. When wealth, ease, and beauty no longer surprise you, because they belong to the self you've assumed. The mind will still ask, but what if it doesn't happen? And that question too must be lovingly revised. Not fought, not feared, but answered in silence. It already has happened, says the new self. And from that still reply, the waves are sent. The bridge begins to build. The world begins to reflect. All things are possible to him that believeth. Not some things, not probable things, all, and believing is not wishing. It is the felt agreement with a new self, the one who walks in the scene fulfilled, the one who lives as if the promise were already kept. And it is, you are no longer waiting. You are preparing. Your inner world has become the womb, and your outer world, slow, obedient, is catching up. It cannot resist your state. It must yield to the image sustained in feeling. So you do not need to push. You do not need to check. You need only to hold, to abide, to return again and again to the feeling of already done. And from that sacred dwelling, all things flow. Let the feeling deepen now. Let it settle in the body like warm oil. You do not need to prove this to anyone. You do not need to explain how or when. You need only to know, and to let that knowing carry you across every appearance of lack or delay. You are not just imagining wealth. You are becoming the one for whom wealth is natural, and when it becomes natural, it becomes visible. But just as you begin to rest fully in this identity, another gentle stirring moves beneath the stillness. What if this same law could not only bring wealth, but heal every relationship, every memory, every part of life, once thought separate from the divine? And if the law can bring money, if it can draw lottery wins and open the gates of abundance, then what else might it restore? What else have you quietly accepted as broken, as distant, as beyond repair? For the same law that reshapes matter can mend the unseen, relationships strained by silence, memories stained with regret, seasons of life you thought lost to time. All of them await revision. All of them wait for the moment you no longer see them as fixed. You begin to feel it now. This law is not partial. It is not limited to dollars and digits. It responds not to the nature of the thing desired, but to the certainty of your assumption. And just as you became the one who has, so too can you become the one who is reconciled, the one who is whole, the one who walks with peace where once there was fracture. You need not revisit the pain. You need only to change the scene. You are not bound to history. You are bound to the image you accept now. What was can be remade, not by time, but by selection. Choose again, and you will live again. This is the hidden mercy of imagination, that it not only creates the future, it can redeem the past. What you feel now becomes what you live, regardless of when or where the story began. You are not the product of events. You are the source of their meaning. So return gently to that which you once left unresolved, not to relive it, but to revise it. See the person differently. Feel the moment healed. Let the atmosphere of love wash over the memory until it becomes something new, not false, fulfilled. And as you revise, something beautiful begins to rise. You are no longer trying to change the world. You are healing the self, and the world, obedient, reflective, perfect in its mimicry, shifts to match. You have done this with wealth. You have imagined the win. You have assumed the fortune. And now you see the deeper truth, that every form, every figure, every person is just another costume of the same eternal principle, consciousness made visible. Let this truth rest in your chest. Let it become your still foundation. You no longer chase outcomes. You shape states, and the state, once assumed, becomes the seed, and every seed bears fruit in its time. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. This renewal is not a moral cleansing. It is a creative reset. A return to origin, to essence, to the place within where all things are always possible, and from that place, all things are given. You are learning now to live from the end in every area, not just in finance, but in love, in health, in purpose. You do not compartmentalize the law, you embody it fully, and life begins to respond in symphony. The same imagination that held the feeling of winning now holds the vision of peace, of wholeness, of divine harmony in all you touch, and the world bends not out of force, but out of reflection. Let your inner world become the sacred theater. Let it be the place where all is made new, and let your outer world fall in line, scene by scene, not because you demanded it, but because you dared to feel it real. You walk now in an atmosphere of assurance. You rest, not because you are finished dreaming, but because you know the dream, once accepted, becomes the path, and the path will unfold beneath your feet. But just as this peace settles deeper, as the outer begins to reflect the new inner shape,
Another question arises in the silence. Not what can I change, but who am I really, beneath all assumption, and what happens when even identity itself is made new? And when even identity is made new, the final veil begins to lift. You thought you were manifesting money. You thought you were rearranging outer things. But now you feel it, deeper than all desire, beyond every appearance, the gentle truth rising like dawn. You were never seeking change. You were seeking self. Not the self shaped by memory, not the self clothed in labels, not the self bound to history, but the I am beneath it all, the still radiant awareness that declares and becomes, the one who says I am rich, and the world bends to reflect it, the one who says I am free, and the shackles fall away without sound, the one who no longer asks how, for it knows it is the cause. You are that I am, not one day, not in potential, now, always. That which you assumed to be outside, the money, the win, the security, was always a shadow cast by your own light, a projection from the invisible self, seeking to be known through form. And now you know. This is not the end of creation, it is the beginning of mastery. For to know yourself as the operant power is to walk in peace, even as the world shifts around you. You no longer react, you revise, you no longer strive, you assume, you no longer chase, you dwell, and as you dwell in this identity, not the seeker, but the source, the outer continues to change, quietly, smoothly, in ways so seamless you forget to call them miracles. They feel natural now, because the self from which they arise is no longer foreign, it is home. Let this truth soak into the deepest part of you. You do not have to become, you only have to be. The one who has already received, the one who is already whole, the one who walks in the garden of assumption and calls it reality. The question is no longer, what can I have? But who am I willing to be? And as you answer with feeling, not words, not logic, but inner alignment, the outer world listens. Before Abraham was, I am. This is not a name of history. It is the eternal signature of consciousness, the root of all form, the silent power that creates without effort and sustains without strain. You speak it now, not with lips, but with vibration, not to declare, but to remember. For what you are, the world must confirm. No lottery ticket is more powerful than this knowing. No bank balance can equal this wealth. For from this I am, all things are drawn, and when you rest in it, when you dare to live from it, nothing is withheld. So let the old identity fall away like dust. Let the self that worried dissolve. Let the one who begged be laid to rest. You no longer ask the world to change. You change yourself, and the world bows. This is the final freedom. Not having, being, not doing, dwelling, not reaching, remembering. And yet as you fully inhabit this timeless self, another mystery stirs in the silence, a sacred paradox, hidden in all things, that even the dreamer and the dream are one, and all that you behold is yourself pushed out. So what will you imagine now, knowing it all returns to you fulfilled? And when all that you behold is truly yourself pushed out, how gently your gaze begins to change. No longer do you see people as obstacles, or blessings, delays or answers. You see them as mirrors, each one reflecting a facet of your own assumed identity. The clerk behind the counter, the figures in the news, the message that arrives unexpectedly, all are you clothed in form, answering the quiet command of your state. So the question shifts again. Not what do I want, but what am I seeing? Not when will it come, but what have I assumed that makes this moment what it is? You begin to move through the world like a lucid dreamer, knowing that every scene, every symbol, every sound, was drawn from the image within. There is no one else, no outside, no opposition, only consciousness expressing itself in a language as precise as your feeling. You no longer fear the shadows. You understand their origin, and because you do, you stop trying to change the outer and return always to the inner root. The world does not need fixing, it needs reflecting, and yourself, steady, knowing, surrendered, becomes the still surface upon which heaven casts its likeness. Feel what that does to your sense of control. The old grip loosens, the hands unclench. You are not trying to dominate life, nor escape it. You are no longer trying to manage 1,000 moving parts. You are only tending to one thing, your state, and from the state, all else flows. You begin to live as if reality were clay in your hand, but softer still, a breath, a mist, responding to the slightest shift of your inner conviction. What you believe becomes, and what you sustain, solidifies. The outer is slow to speak, but it speaks faithfully. And now you wait with grace, not with strain. This is where true wealth begins to show itself. Not in numbers, not in prizes, not even in the arrival of what was longed for, but in the effortless unfolding of a world that can no longer surprise you, because you no longer separate yourself from its source. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, not someday, not after the win, now, and always. For the kingdom is within you, and the power is your imagination, and the glory is the reflection that follows your assumption, as surely as a shadow follows form. You begin to feel lighter, not because circumstances have changed, though they will, but because the weight of waiting is gone, the tension of needing is gone. You live now in the rhythm of being, and from being, the world reshapes. Even the lottery, that symbol of chance and randomness, begins to feel less mystical, less distant. You no longer see it as improbable, you see it as inevitable. If the self who has already won is the self you faithfully inhabit, the outcome is never in question, only the consistency of your state. So you practice the feeling, not as effort, but as returning to what you've already claimed, returning to what you've already come. And each return is easier than the last, until there is no longer a gap between imagining and knowing. And in that seamless knowing, a subtler voice begins to rise, one that asks not for things, but for understanding, not for outcomes, but for union. What if the true prize is not what you receive, but who you awaken as you receive it? And as that voice rises, quiet, steady, deeper than desire, you begin to hear what was always there beneath the wanting. Not the call for money, but the call to awaken. The prize was never the paper, the prize was never the win. The prize was you, uncovered, the self, remembered, the I am, reborn through the mystery of assumption. You thought you were chasing a fortune, but the fortune was crafted to lead you back to this, to the place where identity becomes union, where imagination becomes the altar, and where the inner world reveals itself as the only true source, not source of money alone, but of all things, of peace, of purpose, of reality itself. And now, having walked the path of vision, having claimed the state, having seen the mirror bend to your decree, you feel something sacred softening within. The desire begins to purify. It is no longer, let me have, but let me remember. No longer, let me prove, but let me dwell. For when you dwell in the end, the proof becomes irrelevant. You are the end, and the outer is simply the echo, trailing behind your footsteps. So let the echo come. Let the win arrive in its appointed hour. Let the numbers align, the channels open, the gates swing wide. But do not wait for them to rejoice. Do not place your joy in the outer rhythm. Place it here, in the still center of your being, where all things are already complete. You are no longer the one who hopes. You are the one who knows, and knowing is the true rest. Knowing is the still place, from which all motion begins. You walk now as one who has seen behind the curtain, and who knows that the world dances not of its own accord, but to the song of your inner state. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, and the kingdom is not a far-off land. It is the state you dwell in now. It is the being you assume inside. It is the feeling you carry when no one is watching, that soft, unwavering certainty that it is already yours. So claim it now, not with words, but with breath, not with effort, but with ease. Feel the truth settle into the bones, not as motivation, but as memory. You do not need to try. You only need to remember who you are. Let the self you once were fall away like a robe that no longer fits. The self that waited, the self that wondered, the self that doubted. Bless it, and let it go, for you have stepped into the holy garment of assumption, and it wears you now as effortlessly as light wears the morning. And still, something deeper stirs, for if you are the dreamer, if you are the one who calls the unseen into form, then what other dreams might be waiting to be remembered? What other selves might be asking to be born through your awareness? Let that wonder lead you forward, into the limitless horizon of what you truly are.
And as that horizon begins to glow within you, what once seemed like the edge of achievement now unfolds as the beginning of remembrance. You are no longer climbing toward a goal, you are descending into truth. Every step forward feels more like returning. Every gain reveals something you had never lost. Even the dream of winning the lottery becomes less about fortune and more about alignment, a signal, not of what you've attained, but of who you've become. And who you've become is not a version improved, but a vision revealed, the self beneath the self, the quiet, radiant center that neither asks nor strives, but simply is, the one who never doubted, never lacked, never hoped, because it never forgot. This is the essence of creation, not to strive for more, but to strip away all that denied what already is. You win the lottery, not when the numbers match, but when the old identity is no longer worn. When the new self, the one who assumes abundance as natural, walks through the world without flinching, without reaching, without questioning its own reflection. You begin to feel the difference now, not in theory, but in the way your breath moves slower, the way your shoulders soften, the way your mind no longer searches, because you have returned to the place where nothing is needed, and from that place, everything is given. This is why the law works. This is why it never fails. It responds to being, not pleading. It echoes the state, not the sentence. It molds itself around the self you carry in silence. And if that self is abundance, then abundance must come. If that self is peace, then peace must fill your path. You cannot sow one seed and harvest another. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. You are that man. The treasure is not outside. It is not won or given or granted by chance. It is stored within, in the imaginal act sustained, in the scene assumed, in the version of you already living the fulfilled desire. Let that version rise in you now, without forcing it, without scripting it. Just feel its ease, the calm confidence of one who never doubted the outcome, the subtle joy of one who lives not in fantasy, but in the remembered fact of having. The world may not yet mirror it, but your state has shifted, and the mirror always lags behind the face. You no longer look for signs because you are one. The atmosphere around you begins to hum with the rhythm of sufficiency. You no longer wish for riches to appear, you expect them to. Quietly, lovingly, inevitably. And even this expectation is not demanding. It is soft, sacred. Like the knowledge that spring follows winter, like the feeling that the sun will rise, not because you command it, but because you've aligned with the order of things. So you rest in knowing, you rest in self, and from that rest, the world is made new. But even as you settle into this radiant stillness, another pulse begins to stir, a deeper question, not of what you can manifest, but of what you were truly meant to embody. For if this power lives in you, if this law answers your state without fail, what would it mean to live not just as the dreamer, but as the awakened dream itself? And to live as the awakened dream itself, and to live as the awakened dream is to step beyond the veil of cause and effect entirely. It is no longer enough to assume from the end. You begin to see there is no distance between the dream and the dreamer. The line dissolves. The world you thought was separate begins to move as your very breath, shaped by your state, sustained by your being. You are not in it. It is in you. And so you no longer think of the lottery as something to win. You do not imagine money as something to be drawn in. You see them now as natural extensions of a self already whole, already chosen, already infinite in scope. There is no striving left in this awareness, no looking over the shoulder of the moment to see if the prize has arrived. You are it, and what matches you must come. It is law. This changes everything. It changes the way you speak to yourself. No more inner negotiations, no more spiritual bargaining. You speak only from the state you have claimed. You no longer whisper, "Will it happen?" You rest in the silent knowing, it already has. This is the posture of the awakened dream, not the seeker, but the source. Even your desires begin to shift. They lose their edge. They become soft, round, full, not demanding, but unfolding. They no longer rise from lack, they rise from expansion. Not I must have, but how else can I express this wholeness? And so the lottery win becomes not a miracle, but a ripple, an echo, a natural outcome of who you are being. In Him we live, and move, and have our being. That being is imagination. An imagination, when believed in, becomes form. The form may change, but the source does not. So you stop trying to hold the manifestation. You dwell in the source, and let the world rearrange itself accordingly. And it does. You begin to see it everywhere, not in big flashes, but in subtleties. A check arrives sooner than expected. A conversation bends in your favor. The numbers in your mind, long felt, find their way onto a ticket. But you do not gasp. You smile, because it had already happened in you. This is simply the shadow catching up. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to earn. The awakened dreamer knows this life is not reacting to you, it is you. And wealth is no longer the goal.
It is the natural perfume of a self that dwells in joy, that assumes without fear, that creates from rest. Let this rest become your temple. Let it be your secret place, your invisible throne. You are not waiting for a door to open. You are the one who opens it. Every time you choose to feel from the end, you write a new law into the fabric of your world. Every time you return to the scene fulfilled, you walk once more in dominion, and from this dominion flows every gift. But even as you sit crowned in this understanding, another question begins to form in the stillness. Not what can I manifest, but what am I here to awaken in others, simply by being this truth, without saying a word. And to awaken it in others, you need not speak their language, or explain the law, or guide their steps. You need only remain, quietly, faithfully, in the fullness of your own assumption. The world does not change through noise, but through vibration, and the one who walks in the atmosphere of already done, cannot help but call forth remembrance in those who watch, even unknowingly. You carry it now, this silent frequency of fulfilled desire, this subtle echo of heaven, and those around you begin to feel it. They may not understand it, they may call it luck, or timing, or mystery, but something in them stirs when they enter your presence, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. You are the living proof that creation begins within. You are the quiet invitation for others to return to their own I am. And when they ask, when they wonder why things seem to move for you, you do not need to convince. You need only to remember, I dwell in the end, and the end is always mine. It is not your job to awaken others, but your being, your example, your peace. These become seeds. You leave them behind in your silence, and when they bloom, they do so in the hearts of those who are ready. You do not need applause. You do not seek acknowledgement. You only abide in the law, and let the law do the work. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. You do not have to shine. You only have to be what you already are, and that light, steady and still, reaches farther than you know. And so the desire for wealth, which once felt personal, expands. It is no longer about your having. It becomes your giving, not of possessions, but of presence, not of teachings, but of radiance. You begin to see that your assumption doesn't just alter your experience, it alters the collective field. You raise others not by lifting them, but by rising yourself. This is why you cannot lower yourself to match the fear of another. You must remain in the end, even when those around you do not see it, even when their doubts try to pull you back into probability and logic. You do not leave the state to prove your point. You stay in the state, and your life proves the point for you. This is the hidden generosity of spiritual wealth. It is contagious. It whispers, you can do this too, without ever needing to speak. And the more you live in the atmosphere of fulfillment, the less you fear loss, or rejection, or misunderstanding. You know who you are. You know what you've assumed. You know that every word spoken in imagination was a command, and reality, though it may seem slow, is always faithful in return. So rest in that fidelity. Rest in the law. Let your days unfold not with effort, but with knowing. The outer will catch up. The prize will arrive. The numbers will align. But these are only shadows of a deeper change, that you have become a living temple of remembrance. And even now, as the world bends to your state, another truth begins to whisper beneath the stillness, that the real lottery was never the money at all, but the awakening to your eternal nature as the operant power. So what then becomes possible, when even money becomes just the beginning of who you know yourself to be? And when even money is no longer the goal, but the echo, when it becomes the faintest outer symbol of your inner certainty, a deeper doorway opens. You begin to feel the edges of something far vaster than winning, possessing or displaying. The law no longer thrills you because of what it can produce. It humbles you because of what it reveals, that you were never the one seeking power. You are power, asleep and awakening. This is the sacred turn, where assumption no longer serves a single desire, but becomes the vessel for your divine identity to express itself in form. The lottery, the wealth, the ease, they are the ripples left behind as you walk on water, not miracles, not exceptions, natural movements of a world rearranged by the one who remembers their origin. You feel it now, don't you? The hunger that once gripped your chest has softened, the urgency to manifest, to get, to prove. It fades in the presence of this truth, I already am, and from that am, all things are added, not because you earned them, because you aligned. You begin to ask not can I have this, but who do I choose to be now? And as you answer from the end, from the finished scene, from the fulfilled feeling. The world must obey. It has no choice. Reality is not arguing with you. It is listening to your state, and your state is always a prayer. Whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. Believing does not mean hoping. It means feeling it real, not someday, not almost. Now quietly, deeply, as a matter already settled. Let this feeling move through you now, not as a technique, but as a remembering. You are not performing faith. You are resting in it. You are letting go of the need to see, because you already are. You don't check the mirror for your face. You know who you are, and now you check the mirror of life with that same assurance, not to find, but to recognize, and you recognize more each day. The outer world, slow as it may be, begins to shimmer with the shapes of what you have already seen within. Unexpected deposits, conversations that bend toward favor, numbers that match the ones you've seen in the silence of your mind. But even these bring only a soft smile now, because they are not surprises, they are reflections. And if money can appear like this, if fortune can be drawn from stillness, if wealth can flow from remembrance, then what else is waiting? What else have you quietly believed was impossible? What doors might open the moment you accept there were never any locks? You see now, the law does not care whether you seek $100 or $1 million. It responds only to state. The scale of the desire is irrelevant. The only question is, can you dwell in the end, without wavering? Can you rest in what the world calls impossible, and feel it as familiar? You can. You are, and in this quiet certainty, the world cannot help but follow. But just as your peace deepens, just as you rest fully in the wealth already assumed, another question begins to shimmer in the silence. Not what more can I manifest, but what more can I embody when I no longer live for results, but for revelation itself. And when you no longer live for results, but for revelation, the game itself disappears. The chase ends, the striving melts, and what remains is presence, full, luminous, unwavering. You are not waiting for evidence, because your very being is the evidence. You have become the proof of the unseen, clothed in calm and crowned with quiet authority. It no longer matters whether the world has caught up. You no longer measure progress by outer appearance. You feel the realness within, and that is enough. For you've seen the rhythm now, how every event, every figure, every so-called coincidence, is but a wave returning from the image you cast in silence. You understand that what appears is the echo, and the echo cannot form without the word first spoken in the stillness of being. And so you live there, in the end, not as a performance, but as embodiment. The wealth you once longed for now surrounds you as atmosphere. It is no longer about having more, it is about being the one who lacks nothing. The numbers may rise in your account, the windfall may arrive in sudden and beautiful ways, but the real abundance is this: you no longer need them to feel whole. You've become whole by being who you've always been. Be still, and know that I am God. Not do more, not wait longer. Be still, still in conviction, still in identity, still in the living memory that the kingdom is within, and that all that is without will bend to the one who never forgets this. This stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness without movement, a well of certainty that no circumstance can drain, and from it, everything flows. It is here that the law becomes grace, not just mechanism, but love, not just order, but rhythm. You are no longer trying to win, you are letting the wind find you, because you are finally where it lives, and where it lives, is in the version of you who already knows. This knowing is not mental, it is not logic, it lives in the body. It is the soft breath of course, that fills your chest. It is the ease in your spine. It is the relaxed gaze that no longer seeks signs, because it walks as one. You are no longer a vessel for desire, you are the flame itself. You burn with the radiance of fulfillment, and in your glow, life bends. Others begin to notice, not because you speak differently, but because you carry no conflict. You radiate a kind of peace that the world craves, and the strange beauty is, you didn't acquire it, you remembered it, and what you remember, you embody. So now, as the echo continues to rise, the emails, the winnings, the meetings, the moments that once seemed miraculous, you meet them with grace, because they are no longer miracles, they are mirrors, they are what always had to come, once you changed the image from which they were cast. This is what it means to truly live in the end, not to wait, not to try, but to walk as the one for whom the desire is already fulfilled, and fulfilled so deeply that it no longer even burns, it simply shines. And yet, even standing here, in this glowing fulfillment, another voice whispers, gentle, eternal, what if this light you've become is not just for your world, but for the awakening of every world you touch?
And what if this light is not just yours to keep, but yours to become so fully that others remember their own? Not by preaching, not by persuading, but by presence alone. For there is no greater sermon than a life lived in silent mastery. There is no louder truth than the calm of one who no longer needs to explain, who simply is. This is what your assumption does. This is what your wealth creates. Not only freedom for yourself, but clarity for those who feel your atmosphere and begin to believe again. They may not ask you how, they may never speak it, but they feel it. That something in you walks in a different rhythm, that something in you bends reality without force, that something in you remembers what they had forgotten. You don't need to teach the law to live the law. You don't need to speak of imagination to radiate its proof. You need only to dwell in the end so completely that your vibration becomes a quiet invitation to every soul you pass. Come home to yourself. It is not what you do, it is who you are, and you are the fulfilled word. Not someday, now, not becoming, being. You begin to see how the entire journey from desire to manifestation was never really about results. It was about identity. The money, the lottery win, the increase, they were symbols, initiations, not to test your worth, but to awaken your awareness. And now that you are aware, you realize you can never return to the old way of seeing again, because now you see from the mountaintop. You do not see possibilities, you see inevitabilities. You do not wonder if it will come, you wonder only how gracefully you will allow it. You do not wait with tension, you dwell with certainty. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. And heaven is not above. Heaven is the state of fulfillment. And your Father is the I am that breathes through your assumption. When you walk in the light of your chosen end, you glorify the source from which it came, not through boasting, but through being. This is the holy paradox, that the quieter your knowing becomes, the louder your life speaks, that the more relaxed you grow, the more the world yields. You do not push, you possess, not with grasping, but with stillness. And as you move now, through a world increasingly shaped by your inner decree, you feel it. Not just gratitude, but reverence. Not just celebration, but awe. For you realize that you were never learning how to manifest. You were remembering how to be God in motion. And God does not beg. God does not wonder. God does not watch for signs. God declares. And it is so. So what else shall you declare now? What world will you imagine next, knowing there is no outside power, no external judge, no obstacle greater than a shift in self? What vision will you now dare to assume, not to get, but to give, not to take, but to reveal? What does a life look like when abundance is no longer the desire, but the foundation from which all other creations arise? And what does it feel like to create from abundance rather than for it? To move not from hunger, but from overflow. You begin to notice, not in your thoughts but in your silence, that something within you has turned. The longing has softened into knowing. The effort has dissolved into rhythm. You are no longer the seeker, you are the spring. And from this inner spring, all things arise without delay, without resistance, without fear. The lottery is no longer a wish. It is a symbol of how freely the universe mirrors your inner decree. The money, once charged with need, now flows as a natural extension of your certainty. You are not willing it into being. You are allowing what has already been claimed to take shape in time. You do not chase, you assume. You do not try, you remember. This is the holy shift, when the outer becomes less important than the state from which you perceive it. For when you change the state, the outer must follow. Not sometimes, always. It is not a matter of time, it is a matter of identity. And identity is a choice made in stillness, repeated in feeling, honored in dwelling. You do not need to look for evidence anymore. You are the evidence. Your peace, your posture, your stillness. These are the fruits of a seed already sown. The moment you accepted the end is done, the law began to unfold the bridge. You need only to walk it, calmly, faithfully, without contradiction. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. But the sowing is not in the field, it is in the heart, in the inner conversation, in the silent movie you replay each night before you sleep. That is the soil, that is the altar, and from that all things grow. You understand now that wealth is not a reward, it is a reflection.
The mirror does not choose what to show, it only shows what you are. So when you assume wealth as natural, as easy as done, when you feel it as the normal air you breathe, the mirror must align, the ticket must win, the channel must open, the windfall must arrive. It is not magic, it is the most exact science of all, but it can only respond to who you are being, not occasionally, but consistently. So you remain in the end, not with tension, but with reverence. You know now that the version of you who lives the fulfilled desire already exists, and each time you return to that version, in imagination, in feeling, in breath, you collapse the distance between now and then, until time is no longer felt at all. There is no delay when there is no doubt. So let the identity of the one who has already received grow more familiar. Let their thoughts become your thoughts. Let their rhythm become your walk. Let their ease become your own. You are not pretending. You are remembering. You are not acting. You are realigning. And from that alignment, the world cannot help but respond. But even as you rest in the certainty of this truth, another question stirs beneath the surface. Not what can I have, but how fully can I live now, as if nothing were missing, as if everything were already mine, simply because I have chosen it within. And what would life look like if you no longer felt the gap, if the desire no longer whispered of absence, but sang only of fullness already accepted? You begin to notice how deeply the illusion of waiting has been embedded in the old self, waiting for the sign, the deposit, the win. But something softer and holier begins to take its place, a state where waiting becomes obsolete, where the moment you assume, you are, not becoming, not approaching, being. This is the deepest secret of the law, that time does not separate you from your desire, only self. And when self is shifted, when you put on the feeling of already mine, and refuse to take it off, reality must bow. It does not ask permission, it follows, quietly, certainly. You begin to live differently now, not in anticipation, but in embodiment. You walk through the grocery store as the one who has already won. You sit at your table not hoping, but knowing. The atmosphere around you ripens with certainty. People speak to you as if something new surrounds you. They feel it, though they cannot name it, that you are no longer reaching. You are radiating, and this radiation is the signal. Not what you say, not what you visualize, but what you are. The mood that hums beneath your words, the rhythm of your breath, the ease in your eyes. These are the markings of one who no longer lives in lack. You are not trying to manifest. You are being the one for whom manifestation is already done. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not unto men. Your assumption is your offering. Your chosen state is your praise. And the altar is not in a temple of stone. It is in the quiet chamber of imagination, where you go alone, shut the door and dwell in the end. Let that be your holy place now, the scene that plays behind your closed eyes, the inner feeling you return to again and again, not as effort, but as homecoming. You don't visit the end to escape, you visit the end because it is where you live now, and from this dwelling, money must come, not because of striving, but because it belongs to the version of you you've chosen. The lottery win must arrive, not as proof of power, but as reflection of identity. What you feel real must externalize. The bridge will appear, the people, the timing, the so-called change. It will all unfold without your needing to know how. You rest in the what and the law handles the how. Let that truth soften every anxious thought. Let it still the part of you that wants to control. You are not here to manage reality. You are here to select it, and once selected to remain. And so you remain, but not in stagnation, in saturation. You bathe in the inner experience, until it becomes more familiar than the old facts. And soon the old facts dissolve. The world has no choice. The mirror must change when the face does. You are the new face now, the new name, the new version of self who does not wait, but walks, who does not wonder, but wears. And from this self all things are drawn. Yet even here, in this radiant stillness, in this fullness beyond longing, another whisper stirs. What if the reason you can imagine so vividly is because you are remembering something you once lived before? And what if this vivid imagination, this effortless ability to dwell in the end, is not creation at all, but remembrance? What if every desire you've ever held was the echo of a life already lived, a timeline already chosen in the quiet before time began? That scene you see so clearly in your mind, the one where the lottery win is real, the bank balance overflows, and the breath of relief fills your chest. What if you see it not because it is ahead of you, but because you've been there before. You begin to feel the sacred gravity of this. That imagining is not fantasy, it is memory, reawakened. It is not invention, it is selection, and each time you return to the scene, it becomes more alive, more textured, more familiar, not because you are building it, but because you are remembering it as your own. This is the mystery few ever touch, that the end is not created by effort, but chosen by faith, and faith is nothing more than inner agreement, not belief in something distant, but the calm reverent yes to something already yours, and you say yes now, quietly, not with the mouth, but with the body, with the breath, with the tone of your inner world. You accept what has already been lived in spirit, and the world begins to conform. You do not need to make it happen, you need only to feel that it already has. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. What if that answer is already encoded in your desire? What if the scene you imagine is not a wish, but a message, a telegram from your higher self, reminding you of what is waiting to be worn once more? This is why you do not need to strain to imagine. The feeling is already yours. The scene already exists. You are not creating the image. You are stepping into it. And when you do, when you take on its breath and rhythm and mood, you activate a bridge that must appear, not might, must, and it does not matter how it comes, only that you do not step out of the state once assumed. You remain, and the world bends. You remain, and the numbers align. You remain, and the money flows. You are no longer asking, is this possible? You are beginning to ask, how fully can I remember this version of me who already lives this life? And in that question, you begin to become. Let the memory come now, not the memory of a past life in time, but the memory of your true nature, timeless, creative, divine, the one who has never lacked, never begged, never doubted, the one who does not hope but declares, who does not chase, but embodies. This is who you are, not becoming, being. And when you live from this place, the lottery cannot stay away, not because you need it, but because it belongs to the self you have remembered. You see now, the real prize is not the money, it is the return to the self who calls it in with breath alone. And even now, as the veil grows thinner and thinner, a final question begins to rise in the stillness. If I can remember this life, already won, what else might I awaken, simply by choosing to know it again? And if all that is required to awaken another world is remembrance, then nothing is lost, nothing is withheld, nothing stands between you and the fulfillment of every holy longing. The gates were never locked, the path was never missing, only the identity was forgotten. The you who already lives in the world you once called a dream. You are not asking for wealth anymore, you are not even reaching for it. You are choosing the version of you who already has it, and you are dwelling there without wavering. The lottery win, the sudden provision, the ease that floods in like morning light, these are now the outer garments of an inner shift. You wear them not to prove the law, but to express it, for this is how the law fulfills itself, not through strain, but through embodiment. You do not need to convince yourself anymore. The doubt has dissolved. The old self, the one who watched the mail, who counted the days, who wondered if they were worthy, is gone, and in their place stands the one who knows, the one who feels it done, the one who breathes from the end. And the world, faithful mirror, reflects this knowing in forms both quiet and magnificent. You may never again feel the desperation that once haunted your desires. You have seen too clearly now. You have touched the inner cause. You have sat in the still chamber where creation begins, and you have said yes, not to a future, but to a state. And because you said yes to the state, you said yes to the form. It must come, not as reward, but as reflection. I have called thee by thy name, thou art mine. This is not the voice of a distant power, it is the whisper of your own I am. You do not need to be summoned, you are already chosen. You do not need to be worthy, you are already one. So now you walk in the fulfilled identity, you make decisions from the wealth assumed. You move through each moment, not with hope, but with rest, not with effort, but with rhythm. You are no longer trying to bring the future into view, you are simply remaining in the one who already received. And in this state, you don't just attract the lottery, you embody the law that makes it inevitable. You don't just change your finances, you change your nature. You rise beyond results, beyond circumstances, beyond even the desire that led you here, because now you remember that you are the seed and the harvest, the word and its fulfillment. You remember that you are not the effect of the world, You are its first cause, and in this remembrance, the game ends, the race is over. You do not need to win, you have won. The very